What if I told you something you've never really questioned? You're already brainwashed. Not in the creepy sci-fi movie way, but in the simple, everyday reality of how your mind has been programmed since you were a child. Every belief you hold about money, success, love, or even yourself didn't appear out of nowhere. They were installed by family, culture, school, religion, and media. And most people never realize it. They live their entire lives running a program they didn't choose. Think about it. Why do some people instinctively say money is hard to earn, while others believe money flows easily? Why do some people feel stuck in the same struggles generation after generation, while others break free and create a whole new story for their families? It's not just talent, luck, or opportunity. It's programming. And the scary truth is, if you don't take control of it, the default program will run your entire life. Here's the thing. The program you're carrying now wasn't designed with your freedom in mind. Culture often teaches us to play small, to avoid risk, to fear failure, to distrust wealth, to wait for permission. Schools teach obedience, not creativity. Media fills our minds with fear, comparison, and distractions. Even people who love us sometimes pass down their own limitations without realizing it. And so, without ever deciding, we inherit a mindset of survival instead of abundance, fear instead of faith, smallness instead of expansion. But here's the breakthrough. If you can be programmed, you can also be reprogrammed. If brainwashing is real, then self-brainwashing is not only possible, it's necessary. You don't erase the old reality by accident. You have to install a new one. And this is where everything changes, because reality itself responds to the program running in your subconscious. What you believe, what you see, what you repeat. These things shape the lens through which you experience life. If your internal program says, "I'm broke, I'll always struggle, nothing ever works out for me," then even when opportunities are near, you won't notice them. Just like Hagar in the desert, who cried out in despair, blind to the well of water already beside her. Your focus on lack blinds you to abundance. But if you rewire your subconscious with empowering inputs through new thoughts, new words, new habits, and new visions, your outer reality has no choice but to shift. This isn't hype. It's how the mind works. The subconscious doesn't argue. It accepts whatever is repeated, emotional, and consistent. That's why people stay stuck in the same cycles, because they've been repeating the same story their whole lives. But here's the good news. You can write a new story. You can choose new inputs. You can brainwash yourself into a reality of abundance, freedom, and purpose by consciously feeding your mind a new program until it becomes your new normal. And if you're listening to this right now, I want you to know something. You didn't stumble here by accident. You were meant to hear this, because somewhere deep down, you already know the reality you've been living isn't the only reality available. You can feel that there's more. And this is your confirmation. The question is, will you keep letting the old program run, or will you take control and install a new one? That's where we're going next. In the continuation, I'll show you exactly how repetition rewires your subconscious, why what you frequently see becomes your frequency, and how you can start using this today to build the life God already designed for you. The very first step before you can ever reprogram yourself is awareness. And this is where most people fail, because you can't change what you don't even realize is controlling you. Most people are living on autopilot. They wake up, go through the motions, repeat the same routines, think the same thoughts, feel the same emotions, and at the end of the day, wonder why their life never changes. What they don't realize is that their entire system of beliefs, habits, and responses didn't actually come from them. It was installed. From the moment you were born, you were being programmed. As a child, you didn't choose your environment. You didn't choose what your parents believed about money, success, or God. You didn't choose the words spoken around you, the fears passed down, or the limitations accepted as truth. Yet all of those things seeped into your subconscious mind and became the operating system you live by today. Think of your subconscious like a supercomputer. It doesn't argue, it doesn't debate, it just runs the code it's given. And if that code says money is scarce, or rich people are greedy, or life is always hard, then that becomes the program that runs in the background of your life. You might consciously desire success, but if your subconscious program is wired for struggle, you will always sabotage yourself back to what feels normal. This is why awareness is so crucial. The moment you begin to see that your thoughts and habits are not you, but programming given to you, you take the first step to freedom. Without awareness, you're like a puppet pulled by invisible strings. With awareness, you finally see the strings, and once you see them, you can choose to cut them. Let me make this personal. For years, I didn't question my own patterns. I thought my reality was just my reality. Growing up in a third world country, I thought financial struggle was normal. I thought being stuck in cycles of just surviving was normal. I thought gaming my nights away, repeating the same lazy routines, was just who I was. But when my awareness shifted, when I realized those patterns were not my identity but programming, I could finally ask, where did this come from? And do I want to keep running it? Society doesn't make this easy. Schools don't teach us to think independently. They teach us to follow instructions. Media doesn't train us to expand. It feeds us fear, distraction, and comparison. Even religion, when misapplied, can program people to stay small, passive, and waiting for rescue instead of stepping into the authority God already gave them. The default program is designed to keep you in survival mode, not thriving mode. And yet the Bible makes it clear. Do not be conformed to this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind. Romans 12:2. Why would Scripture say this if we weren't already shaped by the world's programming? Transformation doesn't start with changing the world outside. It starts with becoming aware of the world inside your head and choosing to renew it. Here's the challenge. Awareness isn't always comfortable. When you first start noticing your patterns, it feels like holding up a mirror you don't want to see. You'll notice how often you complain. You'll notice how many excuses you make. You'll notice how many times a day you think about money negatively, or how quickly you assume opportunities aren't for people like you. It stings to see it, but that sting is the birth of change. Because the moment you catch yourself saying, I can't afford that, and instead ask, what if I could? You've shifted from autopilot to awareness. The moment you hear yourself thinking, I'll always be stuck here, and then counter it with, what if this isn't the end of my story? You've broken the program, even for a second. That's where the reprogramming begins. Awareness is the light switch in a dark room. The furniture was always there, but until the light came on, you kept bumping into it and hurting yourself. Once you see it, you can walk differently. Once you see it, you can arrange it. Once you see it, you can design it the way you want. So here's what I want you to sit with. What patterns in your life feel normal, but might just be programming? What beliefs about money, success, or your own worth have you been repeating that didn't even start with you? What habits do you live by daily that you never consciously chose? Becoming aware of these is the first and most powerful step. And in the next part, I'll show you why awareness alone isn't enough. Because once you see the program, you have to understand how it got installed in the first place. That's when you'll discover the real secret, why repetition is the language of the subconscious, and how you can use it to rewire your reality. Most people think change is about forcing willpower, but real transformation happens much deeper, inside the subconscious mind. And to understand why repetition rewires reality, you first need to know what the subconscious is and why it's so connected to your emotions. The subconscious mind is like the hard drive of your life. It's where your beliefs, habits, and patterns are stored. Unlike your conscious mind, which is logical, analytical, and able to think in real time, the subconscious runs automatically. It handles about 95% of your daily behavior without you even realizing it. Think of it like breathing, blinking, driving a car once you've learned. It just happens. That's the power of subconscious programming. Here's the important part. Your subconscious doesn't judge or argue. It simply accepts what's repeated and emotionally charged. That means every time you've heard, money is hard to earn, or you're not good enough, especially if it was tied to strong feelings like fear, shame, or pain, your subconscious recorded it as truth. And once it's stored, it runs in the background like a script that directs your decisions and actions, even if you consciously want something different. This is why repetition is so powerful. The subconscious learns through consistent exposure. The more often you see, hear, or say something, the deeper it gets embedded. This is also why advertising works. Companies spend billions repeating their message because they know your subconscious will eventually accept it. The same applies to your life. What you frequently expose yourself to, whether it's negative news, toxic conversations, or empowering words, becomes the reality your subconscious believes and creates. Now let's connect this with emotion. Emotion is the language of the subconscious. If the subconscious is like soil, then emotion is the water that makes seeds grow. A thought without emotion may pass by, but a thought with strong feeling gets planted deeply. That's why you can remember moments tied to intense joy, pain, or fear so vividly, they were burned into your subconscious with emotional fire. Take fear, for example. If as a child you saw your parents arguing about money and you felt scared or helpless, that emotion linked money with pain. Your subconscious stored it. Now, as an adult, even if you want wealth consciously, your subconscious may sabotage you because it still associates money with fear. On the flip side, if you connect joy and gratitude to money, celebrating small wins, thanking God for provision, your subconscious begins to associate money with safety and blessing, and it naturally attracts more of it. The Bible actually affirms this connection between repetition, belief, and emotion. In Romans 10:17 it says, "Faith comes by hearing, and hearing by the word of God." Notice, it doesn't say faith comes from hearing once. It's through repetition. And when that repetition stirs your heart with emotion, hope, conviction, gratitude, that faith becomes unshakable. This is why affirmations, vision boards, journaling, and meditation aren't fluffy practices. They're tools for reprogramming. They use repetition plus emotion to overwrite old scripts. When you visualize a better future and feel it with gratitude as if it's already real, you're speaking the language of your subconscious. You're planting new seeds, watering them with emotion, and over time they grow into the reality you live. In my own life, I saw this when I was stuck in cycles of gaming late into the night, barely scraping by. My subconscious was programmed for escape, not expansion. It wasn't until I started feeding my mind with books, mentors, scripture, and small actions tied to faith that things shifted. I repeated new inputs until my subconscious finally accepted a new truth. I was meant for growth, not survival. And once that program changed, my behavior followed. So here's the key. If you want to brainwash yourself into a new reality, you must understand your subconscious is always listening. It accepts repetition, and it responds to emotion. Every word you say, every thought you repeat, every image you focus on is either reinforcing the old program or installing a new one. The choice is yours. And in the next part, I'll show you how this plays out practically, how the things you frequently see and focus on literally become your frequency, shaping what you attract and experience in the physical world. What you frequently see becomes your frequency. This isn't just a clever play on words. It's a fundamental truth about how your mind and your reality interact. The subconscious works like a filter. Remember the reticular activating system in your brain? It decides what you notice and what you ignore. Out of the millions of pieces of information flying at you every second, your brain only lets a tiny fraction through. And how does it decide? By what you've been feeding it. What you frequently see, think about, and emotionally engage with. That's why, if you've been looking at lack, hearing about lack, and talking about lack, your brain keeps tuning into lack. You'll see more problems than opportunities, more reasons why things won't work than reasons why they can. On the other hand, if you flood your vision with stories of growth, scriptures of abundance, books about wealth, mentors who live in purpose, your brain begins to tune into a completely different frequency. Suddenly, you notice opportunities you ignored before. You see open doors where others only see walls. Here's a simple example. When you think about buying a red car, suddenly you start seeing red cars everywhere. It's not that the cars just appeared, it's that your RAS adjusted its filter to your focus. The same happens with success, growth, and abundance. If you frequently see yourself winning, read about others winning, and believe in the principle of winning, your frequency tunes into victory, and you start to spot paths to achieve it. From a biblical standpoint, this principle is everywhere. As a man thinketh in his heart, so is he. Proverbs 23:7. What you repeatedly allow into your heart, your inner vision, becomes your life. The Israelites in the desert are a perfect example. Two groups saw the same giants in Canaan. One group saw defeat and fear, the other saw promise and provision. The giants didn't change. What changed was the frequency of their focus. And guess who entered the promised land? The ones who tuned their vision to God's promise instead of their fear. In physics, there's a phrase, where attention goes, energy flows. Water carving rock, a current shaping its path, a magnet pulling in alignment, all of it shows how consistent focus channels force. Your attention is energy, and over time, it sculpts your reality. That's why you can't afford to let random distractions set your focus. The more you scroll through negativity, the more your frequency vibrates with it. The more you align your eyes with vision, hope, and faith, the more you vibrate with that. This is exactly what happened in my own journey. For years, I was seeing the wrong things. Late nights wasted on online games, surrounded by voices saying, "That's just life in a third world country." My frequency was tuned to survival and escape. But once I became aware, I started changing what I saw daily. Books by people like Bob Proctor and Myron Golden, scripture that spoke life instead of limitation, testimonies of people breaking through. Slowly, my inner picture changed, and so did my outer life. Opportunities I once ignored suddenly stood out. Business ideas clicked, connections aligned. Nothing outside magically changed. What changed was what I saw, and that shifted everything. So here's the takeaway. Your eyes are not neutral. They are programming your subconscious every day. What you frequently see online, in your environment, in your imagination, sets your frequency. And your frequency attracts experiences that match it. The challenge then is this. What are you choosing to see? What is your daily input? What are you feeding your eyes, your ears, your heart? Because that will decide the frequency you live in. And in the next part, we'll go even deeper into how to intentionally reprogram what you see, how to cut away the inputs that drag your frequency down, and surround yourself with environments, people, and visions that lift you up. Because once you master what you see, you master what you become. If you want to step into a new reality, you can't keep holding on to the identity of the old one. This is where so many people get stuck. They want new results, but they're still clinging to the same self-image that created their old life. They want wealth, but still call themselves broke. They want freedom, but still see themselves as trapped. They want impact, but still identify as just ordinary. Here's the truth. You cannot stay who you are and go where you've never been. The shift begins with identity. And this is where the be-do-have principle comes alive. Most people live it backwards. They think, once I have money, then I'll do the things successful people do, and then I'll finally be someone confident, secure, and free. But life doesn't work that way. You don't wait to have before you become first. Be-do-have flips the script. First you change who you be. You decide, I am the kind of person who handles money wisely. I am the kind of person who creates value. I am the kind of person who follows through. When you take on that identity, it naturally shapes what you do. You begin to take actions aligned with that new self. And those actions over time lead you to have the results you were chasing. Think of it this way. If you keep saying, I'm just not disciplined, then your subconscious will make sure your actions match that identity. But if you shift your identity and say, I am disciplined, even before you feel it, your subconscious begins pulling your actions into alignment. You'll start showing up differently, not because you forced yourself to with willpower, but because it's who you now believe yourself to be. Identity is powerful because it's the thermostat of your life. If your identity is set to average, even if you push yourself temporarily into higher achievement, you'll eventually self-sabotage back down to your setting. But if you raise your identity setting, if you see yourself as someone worthy of abundance, someone called by God to impact, someone designed for fruitfulness, you will rise to meet it. Look at the Bible. God changed Abram's name to Abraham, father of many nations, before he had a single child. Why? Because the identity had to shift first. Gideon saw himself as the least in my family, but God called him mighty warrior before he ever won a battle. Peter was called the Rock before he showed the stability that name implied. Over and over, God shows us that identity precedes reality. You don't wait for proof, you step into identity, and reality aligns. And here's the hard truth. Clinging to your old identity is the fastest way to stay stuck. If you keep identifying with your mistakes, your failures, your past patterns, you'll never move beyond them. The Israelites saw themselves as grasshoppers in the face of giants, and that's exactly how they lived. Defeated, wandering, never entering the promise. But the moment you shift identity, everything changes. When you start saying, I am a steward of wealth, I am a creator, I am chosen, I am fruitful, your subconscious receives it. It may feel uncomfortable at first, like you're lying to yourself, but that's just the old identity resisting. If you persist, repetition plus emotion rewires it. This is why vision boards, affirmations, and declarations aren't fluff. They're identity programming tools. They remind you daily of who you are becoming. The more you see it, say it, and feel it, the more natural it becomes. Until one day it's not something you're trying to become. It's simply who you are. So ask yourself right now, who am I choosing to be? Am I still wearing the labels of my old reality, or am I ready to take on the identity of my new one? Because the new reality you want is waiting. But it won't unlock until you stop being the person tied to the old story. And in the next part, we'll explore how to sustain this new identity, how to anchor it with environments, habits, and spiritual truth so it becomes unshakable. Because identity isn't just about who you say you are, it's about what you surround yourself with that reinforces it every single day. When you've shifted identity, the work isn't finished. The real test is whether you can sustain it long enough for reality to catch up. Most people taste a glimpse of a new identity, but then slip back, not because they didn't want it, but because they stayed in an environment that kept reinforcing the old self. Think about it. You can't plant a seed in toxic soil and expect it to thrive. In the same way, you can't plant a new identity in an environment that constantly feeds your old story. If you keep surrounding yourself with people who think small, environments that echo limitation, and habits that confirm mediocrity, your subconscious will eventually bend back to match it. That's why environment is stronger than willpower. You may decide to be abundant, disciplined, and free, but if you wake up and scroll through negativity, gossip, and fear every morning, your subconscious takes those images as commands. You may say you are a creator, but if you only consume and never produce, your subconscious will doubt the new story. You may declare that you are disciplined, but if your space is cluttered with distraction, your mind mirrors that chaos. The good news is that environment can also be your biggest ally. If you want your new identity to stick, build an environment that reinforces it automatically. Fill your home with reminders, verses on your walls, vision boards, journals of answered prayers. Surround yourself with people who already live in the mindset you're stepping into. Replace toxic voices with mentors who expand your vision. Remember, faith comes by hearing. What you constantly hear and see becomes what you believe. Habits are the microenvironment of your daily life. Every action you repeat is a vote for the identity you're choosing. If you're becoming a disciplined person, your habit of waking up early is proof to your subconscious. If you're becoming wealthy, your habit of saving and investing, even in small amounts, tells your subconscious, this is who I am now. If you're becoming a spiritual leader, your daily prayer and meditation reinforce it. Habits are not just routines, they're anchors that stabilize identity until it becomes unshakable. This is why Jesus often said, "Abide in me." Abiding is staying, dwelling, surrounding yourself in his presence until it's no longer something you visit. It's who you are. Identity becomes unshakable when it's not just declared once, but lived daily in the soil of supportive environment and watered by habits that match. So here's the conclusion. Stepping into a new reality is not about luck, nor is it about waiting for circumstances to align. It's about deliberately shifting who you believe you are, anchoring that identity with environment, and reinforcing it with daily habits. If you do this long enough, reality has no choice but to align with the frequency you've chosen. And here's the challenge. For the next 7 days, act as if your new identity is already true. If you are disciplined, then wake up and behave like it. If you are abundant, then make decisions like someone who expects overflow, not scarcity. If you are called, then speak and move like someone God has already sent. Don't wait for external confirmation. Be it first. Because identity isn't about someday. It's about right now. And the faster you live as the person you're becoming, the faster your life transforms into the reality you've been praying for.